walking back to pitchforks and flaming torches around like the 8th episode, so to speak, and about a week downrange. Just waiting here on the stream to start. Should be going live right about now. I'm gonna double check on. Oh, it says it's up and running. Frame rates are good. Got this camera changed a little bit, like for graphical purposes, for speed purposes too. Got two different ways of making the camera work here now. I'm going to start here with...
All right, everyone. Stock Car Scott, a.k.a. Phil Scott, the governor of the state of Vermont, is a goofball. So it's time for Vermont Issues, Episode 7. Governor Phil Scott, more concerned with Canadians than Vermonters. Apparently that's the case. You know, the last 2 times he's been spoken of at all within our local news. Well, what are they saying? One is a fluff piece saying, oh, he wins Thunder Road. Your governor is a good stock car racer, which has nothing to do with policy. Maybe.
Actually, the first thing here, which really makes me laugh, is the fact that he's outright talking about the fact that Vermont and Canada seems to be the vector through which socialism in the United States has been blossoming and growing. Whether or not I like that or not, right? So there is a connection. There's definitely a spiritual and business connection between
personality.
states.
Okay, he's a personable guy. He goes to a brewery and gets you know, wasted and then drives cars around. That's fine. That doesn't mean anything as far as taxation. It doesn't mean anything as far as any other issue that we would be discussing. But okay, he's personable. That's just wonderful. But now we find Phil Scott delivering a fairly lengthy expose with the other governors in the country on protecting our relationship with Canada, basically soothing the Canadians, making sure they don't worry too much. Part of this makes sense because Vermont shares a border with Canada.
See,
you know, we're one of those border states, and people conveniently forget that. And there is a lot of tourism here, especially from Quebec.
There's no wall to Vermont.
People come, and for some odd reason, people that already live in the wilderness want to come see our wilderness.
Ski bumps!
But more power to you. I mean, it means more money for the state as far as tourism goes, so I guess that's okay. And they come and they see things. Watch the, again, the trees turn color. Buy a gallon of maple syrup, maybe go for a dip in Lake Champlain or something like that. Oh, look, you know, little red barns. Those are cows. They're really cute and stuff. You know, they're actually, generally, they're quite tasty, but I guess you could call them cute. They are a little bit, okay. They do licky things and make cute little sounds. But here he is. He weighs in, for instance, on the marijuana issue. The legislature backs legalization. The citizens back legalization. The courts have no problem with legalization. He stands in the way, says, no, it's not the time, go negotiate it more. And then he shuts up about it, won't say anything about it. When's the last time he delivered a significant speech on the opiate epidemic, you know, which is tied right into that same issue? When's the last time he mentioned, oh yeah, by the way, taxes in this state are burdensome on business and on citizens, private citizens alike. People can't get ahead, blah, blah, blah. No, instead we find him delivering a speech to the other governors. Instead of pointing out, hey, Vermont's economic model doesn't work, and we want to get it working again, you know, lower taxes and regulatory fees enough so that businesses can thrive here, so that we can continue to exist as a state, so that, you know, the majority of people who graduate actually want to stay in the state. Weather aside, instead of doing that, he's rambling about Canada and how he's worried that the Canadians are afraid now because Trump happens to be in office. And Phil Scott's a Republican. He's the weirdest Republican ever. He sits there, and he's done this before, and he like lambastes Donald Trump, who is, again, supposedly, he's kind of a Republican. Trump's not really a partisan. Phil Scott's not like the most hyper-partisan Republican you could imagine either. I wanted Lissman, honestly, to be the candidate. He would have won over Sue Minter, probably by a larger margin. I begrudgingly voted for Scott because, like, well, there's no libertarian candidate. The only other person running is like crazy socialist from the libertarian, from Liberty Union. So who else? I mean, it's either there's no one else to cast a ballot for.
No one
I could have voted
between.
for Mickey Mouse, I guess, but what would have been the point? Now, Phil Scott, it was fairly clear, was going to win anyway at that point, because he's more reserved, and Sue Minter, all of her ads were basically, we've got a gun problem in Vermont, as in private citizens have too many guns, not even any crime associated with them. And she was just a Bloomberg, like, far leftist gun hawk, which is what she was. And people don't take too kindly to that around these parts, even if a lot of them are liberal. They sort of back off on the gun rights. Even Sanders did. Even Bernie Sanders in the debate, he's talking about how he doesn't have a big problem with guns. He's like, oh, people need to understand that there's a difference between the rural people of my home state and guns and people living in a big city, or something like that. And he's kind of right. And Hillary Clinton attacked him for this. So did the DNC. It's like they're the ones that want to rob everybody of the right to self-defense because it makes them easier to control, I guess. But then we've got Little Phil. And Little Phil just wants to race stock cars, drink beer, and talk about Canada. Oh, please, Canadians, come visiting our state. Nobody's going to stop visiting the state of Vermont, of all places. Right across the border, because it happens to be convenient, and there's, nice maple syrup and stuff, and good skiing. Is anybody really going to say, well, I was going to vacation in Vermont, but Donald Trump is the president of the United States, so I don't think I will. If a person has gotten to the point where they actually believe that Donald Trump is such a horrible Hitler-esque bigot that he's going to start suddenly detaining a bunch of Canadians because they happen to have come here for a vacation holiday. If somebody actually believes that to be the case, I submit that they've been totally brain scrambled by propaganda, because it's simply not going to happen. Nobody here in the United States has a problem with people coming here as tourists. The debate is mostly about the southern border and about illegal immigration. It has very little to do with tourism. It has little to do with work visas and things like that. And so far, my prediction has come true, which is that Trump has focused on those who have come here and committed a crime. So unless those same Canadians are coming over here looking to murder or rape or something like that, they have nothing to worry about. And Phil Scott pretends it's a big problem. But he's the governor of the state of Vermont. Other than the tourist question involved with maybe another state or involved with another country, why should he even care about these issues? That's not his job description. He's the governor of the state of Vermont. He's supposed to be talking about issues that impact primarily the population of this state. Not every tourist that comes to Vermont is a Canadian, by the way. And you can think whatever you want about
many of them are
the
dual
migrant,
citizens.
refugee, and immigration question overall. But what does that have to do with his job as governor? Beyond saying, yeah, Vermont's, we're continuing to do the same thing we've always done. We're open for business. You're coming here as a tourist. Who the hell is going to harass you for that? It's just not going to happen. It's not like Phil Scott or any other governor is mobilizing the armed forces residing in the state to go hunt down ethnic minorities or something like that. It wouldn't work in Vermont because it's almost homogenous. I'm failing to see exactly why this needed to be brought up as a major issue that needs to be reported on. It's not even like, the Burlington Free Press, WCAX, is talking about it. It's not even that. It's like, the national news is regarding what he said. So he gets, again, for like the third or fourth time since the election, again, Vermont is in the national news for the wrong reason. It was before, it was Rutland is taking refugees and not listening to people under our former mayor, who has been forced out because of this, because he didn't consult the people or even the individuals within these various councils that he could have been taking some advice from, or at least getting their passive consent. Okay, I don't have a problem with it. Let's resettle refugees in Rutland. Then it was because the mayor got forced out because of that, and the refugee resettlement program was here in Vermont was essentially destroyed because Trump was elected. I think they expected Hillary would be elected, so it wouldn't be a problem. And then it was the medical marijuana issue, where our governor is the only person apparently in the state standing in the way, and now you've got this. Oh, we're worried about what Canadians will think of Vermont. What are you talking about, Phil? I don't get it. Do we not have a pension as like the bluest state in the country? Then why would anybody in another country? Why would they assume, oh yeah, Vermont's going to have like jackbooted Gestapo thugs marching up and down the streets waiting to snatch up anybody who's a foreigner and throw them in a concentration camp? The sort of things, the sort of imagery that's evoked by statements like
we haven't heard enough FEMA
is
camp
nonsensical.
FEMA camp.
It's not going to happen. This is the state of Vermont. We do things a little bit differently. And if Trump were mobilizing the jackboots, we would be one of the places that would fight back against that. But he's not doing that. That's the point. The people getting deported have committed crimes while they were here in the country. And certain other classes of people that are being temporarily forced out, more or less. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Trump engages in a little bit of a roundabout catch and release with some of these classes of people. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. He's already moderated a half dozen of the things that he said he wanted to do during the campaign. And he never even stated that he wanted to mass deport everyone who was illegally here. That's something the alt-right heard and was optimistic that would happen, and the far left heard and was like, oh no, we're taken over by fascists. But he never even said these things. And for Scott to weigh in on this, to say that the governor of Vermont has any specific sway over federal immigration policy, I think that's hilarious. I think you've bitten off a little bit more, honestly, than you can chew on this one. You should go back to worrying about jobs within this state, policies within this state that affect directly Vermonters themselves. Because you're not the governor of the United States, you're not the governor of New England, Vermont, you're not the governor of Canada, you're the governor of the state of Vermont. That's about all.
Which has a huge fraction of Canadian dual citizens. That's really the issue, I think, here. And he's touching on it, but he's not like explicitly making it clear. But a pretty good video overall here from Styx. Styx is awesome. Let's check this one out. I haven't listened to this one yet.
Alright everyone, you may have heard that funny story from Toronto where they had this little like city park area and they needed to build a stairway and they gave some crazy estimate. Oh, it's going to cost like $65,000 to put in a set of stairs here so that people can stop walking down this little embankment. It's like maybe 15 feet or something like that.
It's an incredible
story. And some dude said, well, they're going to take a long time, it's going to cost a lot of money, so I'll put in the stairs myself. And he did it DIY. And it cost him like, what was it, like $600 or less?
Maybe.
Ultimately, then they tore him out. And they decided to we can't deal with this DIY stuff because it's not up to code. So they had to strip it out. And then they gave a new estimate. Oh, it only cost like $10,000 this time.
Fucking bastards.
Yeah, like that's a big. It's a big savings, but it still costs a hell of a lot. Building those stairs up to code means in conformity with bureaucratic standards. Not conformity with common sense standards
or civil
of safety
standards
and usage. The stairs that he built were perfectly fine. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have lasted long since, you know, in a fairly humid climate and they're made of wood. So, yeah, you would have had to replace them after 4 or 5 years probably. But still, you're saving a shit ton of money. See, the problem is this. Legalese and bureaucracy strangulate efficiency. What could be done as a private endeavor, and if it's done with halfway decent sound mind by someone who knows what they're doing, would cost relatively little. Suddenly explodes in cost to the point where a vehicle that should cost, you know, 15 grand costs 100 grand. A screwdriver you can get at the store for $10 suddenly costs 100. You get a toilet seat for a submarine that costs thousands of dollars and things like that. And that's really the problem. This is what I've been speaking of. When you get all these overlapping layers of bureaucracy, and they make all sorts of weird rules that you have to follow, so that there's 1,000 pages of paperwork to replace a section of sidewalk, it's going to cost the people a lot of money. Now, people do want properly functioning infrastructure. You know, the roads need to be kept clear. They need to be passable. The sidewalks, if they're all, you know, messed up, and someone could fall over, break their head or something like that. The stairs, they need to be not too steep, otherwise some people might find it difficult to use them. You don't want them falling apart.
We're literally
you don't want the parks poorly maintained.
1 in 10 people say thumb up
trimmed a bit. so that they look good, so that they're not, you know, potentially hazardous. You don't want waste piling up. You gotta remove that, or it's a fire hazard. We understand all these things. But if you privatize all of these things, they become a lot cheaper. The idea, see, here's the funny thing. This is the most hilarious thing of all. People who are like pro-socialism or they're pro-leftism or whatever, they're always worried about some corporation is going to screw us over. It's going to charge us too much money for some service or for some good, and they'll run roughshod over people and abuse them. Isn't that what the government does with shit like this?
Isn't exactly
$65,000 for a set of stairs? Now, if this dude hadn't come in and constructed his $550 stairs, they never would have brought the price down to 10 grand, and that's still exorbitant. That's still a lot of bureaucratic bullcrap. You know where all that other money was going? It was going to go into the pockets of some private corporation chosen, sanctified by the government to be able to construct such a thing, and it would have taken 10 times longer, and it wouldn't have been any more functional. That's the whole point. Government interventionism doesn't mean you get a better product. It simply means you pay a lot more and it takes a lot longer to get it. Look at like the Big Dig in Boston. It took them, they went over budget like what, 4 or 5 times, and it dragged out for years and years, and it was not even started when it was supposed to be done, and then progress was really slow, and traffic was all snarled up. I mean, even more than usual in Boston. For a long period of time, they construct it, they complete it, and like within a couple of months, one of the sections had collapsed. You know, thankfully nobody was killed when it did. I guess it wasn't peak hours for the Big Dig. I went through that, and it's like, yeah, this is a marvel to behold. It's a cool tunnel, and lighting and ventilation and everything. Some private company, given the leeway to do that for their own profit, probably could have gotten it done in half the time with half the budget. We have this problem in Vermont, specifically with regards to our road situations. Now, all these side, semi-private in some cases, some private community roads, like Jasana Drive, the roads here are not completely controlled, I believe, by Rutland Town. And so they stay clear. They're cleared with decent efficiency and a decent frame of time and a lower cost. But the city roads, meanwhile, you look here at the quality of roads in some areas that are like that. And they're pretty good. They're okay. You look at the city roads or the city sidewalks or the city signs or the city street lights, and they're always fucked up. Half the sidewalks in Rutland City are basically impassable. Like, yeah, try pushing a baby carriage down the street on some of those avenues. You're going to have a little bit of a problem. You might as well just carry your infant around and hope that you don't fall down on a crack or something. You find, like, all sorts of problems.
I was going to say crackhead there for a second.
Up. And the reason why is if it were a private endeavor, like, let's say that some homeowners got together and said, well, the sidewalk out in front of our homes is messed up. We're going to make our own molds. And we're going to make some sidewalk. We're going to do it ourselves and install it ourselves. We'll replace the curbs. It would cost them probably 1/5 of what it costs the city to do so.
Yeah,
you know, if there weren't all these regulatory standards, like, people ultimately will look out, generally speaking, for the infrastructure around them and try to maintain it themselves for free. You don't even need to pay any taxpayer money for it because people want those living standards. But so far, no enlightened group of people has suggested that that's a good idea. It just makes sense. If you created a polite, infrastructure-enabled society, people will seek to generally order and maintain it along those lines. If a private company's called in, and you've got more than one private company to choose from, and you've got competition, they're going to try to get that job. So they're going to lower the cost to a substantial degree so that they're profiting, but at the same time, so that they can offer it cheaper than some other company you might be calling up about the same idea. Government doesn't do that. They have unlimited funding. They got the taxpayer money. They're like, well, I don't have to pay for this. It's not even in my community, so why would they care if it's good? They want it to be just decent enough and just cost-effective enough so people don't riot. And that's really the only limitation on their infrastructure projects. So it ends up costing a lot more. It takes a lot longer, and they just say, oh, well, they didn't file this piece of paper, so even though the project's half completed, we gotta cordon this area off. It's now a danger zone. This public can't use it, even though you're living fucking right next to it. You can't use this park. It's like during the government shutdown. What happened? They close up a bunch of parks and memorial sites that don't even need staff to be regularly around. That's why their positions were cut during the shutdown, because they're non-essential. Why are we paying for things that aren't essential anyway? Those should be privatized. The rudiments, the government's economic situation should be this. A government should be in place to provide the rudimentary lattice upon which private endeavors are capable of thriving. It shouldn't be absorbing things into itself and providing everything. You've got townships and communities, they have various services they pay for. They pay for infrastructure and everything. Then you've got states or provinces, they do the same. Then you've got, nations, and they do the same thing. I wonder why your taxes are so high, and it's not efficient. If it were efficient, it would lead to, if the tax rate we have now were being used efficiently to to maintain and build infrastructure, our infrastructure would be perfect. We wouldn't have old rusty bridges. We wouldn't have potholes in the roads. We wouldn't have rusted shotgun blasted street signs. We wouldn't have traffic lights that routinely stop working and skip a couple turns at the intersection or anything like that. Then none of those, they'd be a foreign concept. We'd be like floating around in hovercrafts by now if it were being used intelligently. We wouldn't even need roads. What do you say about foreign concept cars? They say, who will build the roads in a monarchist society? Well, you probably wouldn't even need them. People would just use their own personal hovercrafts. They'd have
where we're going, we don't need roads.
A landing site in their front yard instead of a driveway, and they'd just drive that to work. Wouldn't need roads. The roads could be, plant them with orchards or something. Put in some green strips to absorb some of the pollution from human activity. It'd be a wonderful society. It'd be like living in some futuristic Atlantis novel or something like that. That's what would end up happening. But right now we can't invest in those happy little things because we've strangulated ourselves with bureaucracy. When some city says it's going to cost 65 grand to build fucking stairs, I could do that project. I don't even need any specific set of skills. Give me a book to read for an hour and I'll construct them. It might cost a little more than $550. I think I would have liked it to be a decorative set of stairs myself. But I mean, what's the city going to build? It's going to be some cement. They're going to pour it in there, then mold it, then grind it off a little bit, make it smooth, and that's what you'll get. And 10 years later, there'll be cracks in it, and it'll be chipped, and it won't even be up to code, and they won't even say anything about it because they're the ones that constructed it. This dude stares, screw him. It's DIY. It's illegal for private citizens to build their own infrastructure. That's the job of the government. No, it's not. It shouldn't be. Major infrastructure, you maintain a highway. Even that costs a lot of money. Why are they so dilapidated? You have constant problems with our bridges and roads in this country. Our rails, don't even talk about railroads and all the problems with them lately. And that's the problem. Government centralizes something, gives out a no-bid contract, a grant from taxpayers, and then the company, because of the strangulation and legalese involved, the company takes them for a ride, charges twice as much, takes twice as long, the people are on the hook for that, and the government doesn't even do anything about it. That's really the problem with significant bureaucracy and legalism within our countries. That's about it.
Good job, Sticks. Good job. Way to call them out. What the blue fuck is this going to say?
My name is H.A. Goodman, and I'm an author, columnist, and journalist. To read all my writing, go to counterpropa.com. To support Counterpropa, go to the link on the site. To support this YouTube channel, go to my Patreon link below in the description section.
This is a big one.
And to read my writing in the Hill.
This is one of the reasons why some of the news stories aren't going to go away.
Go to hagoodman.com. You can see my CNN and MSNBC appearances there, warning the world.
Some of the ones that are getting wiped aren't going to be wiped up entirely.
It's not Bernie Sanders. Clinton loses to Trump. I'm going to read you a groundbreaking disobedient media article by a truly talented, wonderful journalist named Elizabeth Voss. The article is titled Zoe's Ark and the Blurred Lines Between Humanitarian Aid and Exploitation. Before I get to that, I'm just going to give you the Wikipedia summary of Zoe's Ark 2007 controversy. On Tuesday, October 30th, 2007, 6 members of the charity organization Zoe's Ark were formally charged by the government of Chad for child abduction. Each of these 6 was also ordered to pay each of the 103 victims restitution equal to approximately $87,000, $87,000, which amounts to $8.95 million total. So, which amounts to $8.95 million total. 6 members of the group were convicted in December of 2007, December 26th of 2007, and sentenced to 8 years of forced labor. Although under an accord between Chad and France, they will serve their sentences in France, which has no forced labor in its penal system. Okay. This is just from the Wikipedia site. I assume that the prison sentences have already been served. Alright, so I'm going to read you a Disobedient Media article, Zoe's Ark and the Blurred Lines Between Humanitarian Aid and Exploitation. So I'll put the Wikipedia link below. This is also cited through reputable sources. So I don't really usually talk about human trafficking or child abduction unless it's
that's truth
like this.
Very, very
cited.
rarely.
You can look at the sources. You can read for yourself.
This is what separates this cat, because he doesn't say the words that's going to get wiped too often, and when he does, he means them.
She broke the DNC, Gucci for 2.0 story that the forensicator and Adam Carter, well, the work of the forensicator and Adam Carter, the forensicator found out that the files, the Gucci for files, 2.0 files, were copied locally, weren't hacked by Russia. That was in Disobedient Media. But I'll read you right now. Where is the line between humanitarian aid and exploitation? Cases like the Zoe's Ark scandal, the Silsby scandal, and others provide a troubling picture of a war-torn or disaster-stricken areas, creating situations ripe for abuse by NGOs and other charitable groups that severely lack public or governmental accountability. These cases raise the question of transparency in aid work and suggest that issues in this area have been ongoing in different regions for some time. To get an idea of how relevant this issue currently is, Russia Today published an article yesterday revealing that more than 100 missing refugee children in Calais may have become victims of sex trafficking. Julian Assange has also questioned the legitimacy of Bono's One Foundation, calling it a, quote, special ops match made in heaven. Elizabeth Lee Beck, a Yale-educated litigator in the DNC fraud lawsuit, appeared in a bombshell interview with alternative media website InfoWars, where she referenced issues that had come up in her research in regards to the death of Peter
this is
Smith,
part of the reason why
Barrington
this
Wiseman,
saw
and
hitting
others.
the fan.
Given these developments, it is especially timely to take a closer look at scandals like Zoe's Ark and ask why, after a decade, the issues stemming from such cases have not been fully addressed. The 2007 Zoe's Ark scandal was one of the first of a string of NGO-related cases of misconduct which resulted in accusations from the president of Chad that the NGO had been intending to sell the children to human trafficking and organ trafficking networks, despite the members of the charity receiving convictions on charges of child trafficking and receiving sentences of
that was me checking the page for chats.
8 years hard labor. The accused were repatriated to France after the intercession of Nicolas Sarkozy. Sarkozy personally persuaded Idriss Déby to give the offenders presidential pardons. The group later faced related charges in France. Charity involvement in child and organ trafficking is a concerning issue. These concerns were repeated in 2010, this time in Haiti, with the Laura Silsby child debacle. The accusations mirrored similar comments made by the Prime Minister of Haiti in an interview with CNN, where he accused American NGOs of removing children from the express purpose of selling them to pedophilia and organ trafficking rings. Former French Minister of Foreign and European Affairs and founder of Médecins Sans Frontières, Bernard Kouchner, bridges these cases in some respects and casts additional light on the concerning lack of transparency that NGOs enjoy and the corruption that has consistently resulted in these chaotic conditions. We know from my interview of Haitian-born journalist Daddy Cherry that 3%, only 3% of the $10 billion associated with the money that Bill and Hillary Clinton and their charities raised has been accounted for. Only 3%. Where did that money go in Haiti?
Well, the 3% or the 97?
Zoe's Ark, also
what
known
happened to
as
the rest?
L'Arche de Zoé, and Children Rescue were registered as an NGO with the French government in 2004 in the wake of the Asian tsunami. The charity's leader, Eric Breteau, soon turned the group's attention toward conflict in Darfur. The 2007 incident that resulted became infamous when it was revealed that members of the organization, including its founder, had intended to sell the children for thousands of euros to French families. The BBC reported that the children recovered from Zoe's Ark were healthy, specifying that the children were not being treated for any serious illnesses or injuries. According to NBC News, Zoe's Ark workers had presented the children as ill and injured by applying bandages to non-existent wounds. This suggested that Zoe's Ark had intentionally faked injuries on the bodies of healthy children, possibly to hide their identity and origin. This article is below,
Not
by the
impossible.
way. Share it everywhere. It's cited. There's hyperlinks, reputable publication, and it links to other reputable publications. This is all cited and written in the correct manner. It's presented in the right way. All this information is true. Furor was heightened when it emerged that most of the children recovered from Zoe's Ark originated from areas not involved in the Darfur conflict. The vast majority of those children were between the ages of 3 and 5 years old, with several infants. Zoe's Ark described their motivations as altruistic, despite admitting that they had planned to circumvent African and European adoption laws in order to remove the children. That the charity would take children with living relatives from a location that was not involved in the Darfur conflict, then intentionally create an appearance of injuries in order to further misconstrue the children's origin is deeply disturbing and raises concerns regarding the NGO's intentions. Outrage surrounding the scandal intensified when it was revealed that the 103 children recovered from the charity represented only a tiny fraction of the total number of charity planned the charity planned to remove under such controversial circumstances. According to the Berkeley Center for Peace, Religion, and World Affairs, Zoe's Ark had intended to remove as many as 10,000 children from the area during the single operation in Chad. My God, 10,000 children they were planning on removing. The wealth that Zoe's Ark would have gained from removing 10,000 such children is truly mind-boggling to contemplate. French citizens were reported to have been prepared to pay thousands of euros, up to 11,000 per child. 6 Zoe's Ark workers were charged with acting illegally as an adoption intermediary, facilitating illegal entry into France, and fraud in regard to hundreds of families who had expected to adopt children. My God. So not only were children being taken from their families, but people, good people who wanted to adopt children were also deceived as well. Despite receiving presidential pardons in Chad, members of the charity were eventually convicted on related charges in France. During these French proceedings, Zoe's Ark leader Eric Breteau was described by a witness as a powerful manipulator. In addition to legal charges, serious accusations were leveled at Zoe's Ark by Chad's president, Idriss Déby. He stated that some of the children would face a darker fate than being sold to French families in illegal adoption. The BBC reported Déby's statement, quote, "Their aim is to kidnap the children from their parents, to steal the children from their parents, and sell them to pedophile organizations in Europe, and even perhaps kill them and sell their organs." Déby's allegation echoed sentiments expressed by Haiti's Prime Minister Jean-Max Bellerive In the wake of the Silby scandal, less than a month after Laura Silby and her associates were arrested in Haiti on charges of child trafficking, Bellerive told CNN that organ trafficking of children and adults was taking place in the country due to demand for, quote, all types of organs. His statement specifically groups participating in this activity. His statement specified groups participating in this activity included NGOs taking children to the United States, a possible allusion to the Silsby case, in the same breath that he described organ and child trafficking. The intervention of then French President Nicolas Sarkozy on the behalf of Zoe's Ark only served to increase speculation around the event. Der Spiegel reported that Sarkozy flew Spanish flight attendants and 3 French journalists back from Chad in his official jet on the same day Sarkozy met with Chad's president. According to Time, those flown back to France by Sarkozy had been under investigation in Chad at the same time of the repatriation. Sarkozy's intention fueled controversy in Chad. The Guardian reported claims that Zoe's Ark charity had enjoyed the backing of Celia Sarkozy. Sarkozy's intervention in the Zoe's Ark debacle was echoed by Bill Clinton's intercession in the Laura Silsby scandal. I was actually going to look that up at this moment, but as extensively reported by William Craddock of Disobedient Media, Silsby was caught in 2010 in the midst of an attempt to remove children, many of whom were revealed to have had living relatives from Haiti under the guise of charitable efforts with the New Life Children's Refuge. Clinton was acting as the UN Special Envoy to Haiti. At the time, and his intervention in the Silsby incident was one of the first official acts after arriving in the country. So you can tell the way Western powers view African children. You can just tell that these children in Chad and children in Haiti. You can just tell how, if this took place, if this happened again with American children, not Haitian children, or American children, not children in Haiti, the laws of the United States of America, you better believe that politicians in the U.S. would demand the world respect our laws. But you see with Nicolas Sarkozy and Bill Clinton, they're trying to go ahead and do everything possible to defend what they view as charities or charitable giving, when in reality these people are trying to steal children. They're trying to abduct children. Children who have homes, who have parents, who have families. My God. That is the worst crime. And especially you're doing it in the name of a charity. Questions raised by Zoe's Ark and Silsby scandals regarding human and organ trafficking were fueled by connections in both incidents to Bernard Kouchner. In the Zoe's Ark incident, French Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Human Rights Ramayade oversaw aspects of the case and served at the time under Kouchner. The Guardian reported that Kouchner also personally conducted Idris Deby during the Zoe's Ark debacle to express solidarity with the children. Kouchner also showed great interest in serving in Haiti in a UN role. Shortly after the Silsby scandal, a 2011 email exchange between Hillary Clinton, Melanie Verveer, and Cheryl Mills, published by WikiLeaks, stated that Kouchner was considering a position as UN Special Representative to Haiti. The exchange reads in part, to H, subject Bernard Kouchner. I saw him at the memorial and he has expanded since. He's told Ban Ki-moon he will take the job of UN Special Representative for Haiti if he can work on a common strategy and platform with you, your husband, and Paul Farmer. He wants to meet with President Xi in New York and is willing to come to D.C. whenever suitable for you to discuss with you. So the Clintons are directly responsible for $10 billion lost in Haiti. $10 billion, only 3% accounted for. This is. I also interviewed. I had the great pleasure of interviewing Haitian-born journalist Daddy Cherry, and I also interviewed Charles Ortel, who is one of the great investigative journalists today on the Clinton Foundation also. He has also stated that it's something around 3% accounted for of all the billions stolen. The email specified that Kushner would agree to the position only if he worked with Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton.
Such an interesting story, this
Farmer
one.
served under Bill Clinton during his tenure as UN Special Envoy to Haiti. Kushner's interest in serving as Special Envoy to Haiti in close partnership with the Clintons is also significant due to the Clintons' deep involvement with humanitarian efforts in Haiti, which have been marred by a number of corruption accusations. The role Kushner considered in Haiti would have mirrored previous humanitarian service in Kosovo, where he was head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo. During the conflict, during his time, Kushner acted as the personal representative of then Secretary General of the UN Kofi Annan. His term in Kosovo coincided with numerous scandals related to human and organ trafficking, which some press reports indicated had tarnished his reputation personally. Kushner is not only a prominent political figure with close ties to the Clintons and their associates, he has personally co-founded NGOs and charitable organizations, including Doctors Without Borders, again illustrating the blurred boundaries that are associated with humanitarian aid. Kushner was also known for his testimony offered in defense of Michael Sunule, who was eventually convicted on charges of pedophilia. Media reports described Kushner's vigorous defense testimony provided on Sunule's behalf against pedophilia charges in Romania. Despite Kushner's testimony, the 67-year-old humanitarian aid worker was eventually convicted on charges of sexual perversions and corruption of minors. Kushner's defense of Sunule provides another concern concerning the murky boundaries between aid groups and allegations of abuse. Sunule served as a humanitarian worker with Doctors Without Borders, the group with which Kushner, I want to pronounce it correctly, but probably not. I'll just say Kushner had founded. French media outlet Libération reported that Kushner had called Sunule's work, quote, a model for international bodies. The guy was convicted of the most heinous crimes, yet his work is the model for international bodies. This raises serious questions as to delineation between NGOs, those who participate in such groups, who are accused of abuses, and the intercession for the accused by prominent political figures, who often have close ties to the NGOs in question. So these non-governmental organizations, these charities, are oftentimes engaging in the most heinous crimes. It's just unbelievable how that is also linked to politicians in the U.S. Sunule's history prior to the pedophilia accusations in Romania was also alarming. Le Parisien reported that Sunule spent 35 years of a life sentence in French prison after being convicted on charges of armed robbery. French press also reported that while incarcerated, Sunule made contact with the Colombian drug trafficking cartel. Despite this history, Sunule had participated in, quote, humanitarian efforts in locations including Rwanda, where he, quote, looked for survivors of families of 200 orphans, organized the placement of those children, and photographed them. Sunule was reported to have also expressed admiration for Jean-Louis Macheron, who served as the president of Doctors Without Borders until 1996. Kushner's defense of a convicted pedophile who had worked for the NGO he founded raised serious concerns regarding why such a person was allowed to work for an aid group in the first place, much less defended by its co-founder. Macheron was not only president of the NGO Kushner co-founded, which hired an employee convicted of sex crimes against minors. Macheron also worked with Bernard Kouchner as a consultant at the French Ministry of Health, leading several missions for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, notably in Albania and in Kosovo, and in the late 90s, where he worked with the French military and international corps. This took place at the time Kouchner served as the personal representative of UN Secretary Kofi Annan as head of UN efforts in Kosovo. CNN reported in 1999 that a human rights official stated that human rights abuses occurred, quote, in the presence of UNMIK, which Kushner headed when he served as the head of United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo. During the conflict, the CNN report was based on statements made by Dick Marty, who called for further investigation into claims that the KLA under Hashim Thaci's leadership had participated in organ trafficking. The Guardian wrote in 2010 that, quote, Kosovo Prime Minister is the head of a, quote, mafia-like Albanian group responsible for smuggling weapons, drugs, and human organs throughout Eastern Europe. These strongly worded claims were made in a Council of Europe report that relied in part on information from the FBI and other intelligence sources. NBC stated that Kosovo had responded to the publication of the report with threats of legal action.
Mm-hmm.
The Guardian also issued an international UN document that described UN forces in Kosovo committing illegal acts and recruiting from the KLA, which we have seen was reported to have been a, quote, mafia-like group with connections to organized crime. They wrote, quote, the UN's own damning verdict on its newly created civil defense force is fresh evidence of the failure of Special Representative Bernard Kouchner. Once again, the admonishments of UN forces, even by the UN's evaluation, sends a clear message that the current level of oversight and humanitarian efforts are severely lacking. The KPC under Kouchner was a UN-backed, UN-funded civil defense corps. It was manned by many high-ranking members of Thaci's KLA. This was exemplified by General Agim Sekou, formerly a senior commander in the KLA, who then served as the leader of the KPC. Sekou was personally accused in an internal UN document of supervising, quote, forced prostitution racket, among other abuses. The Guardian wrote that the KPC had received $30 million aid budget for Kosovo from the UN. Such blurred boundaries were implied again when Serbian media reported that Kouchner reacted angrily to accusations from police officials claiming that Kouchner, quote, must have had knowledge of documented organ trafficking. Even with UN backing, the KPC was accused of participating in serious human rights abuses. The Guardian reported that the KPC had participated in mafia-like activities including murder, torture, and sex trafficking networks. Once again, the line between humanitarian intermediary and perpetrator of exploitation seems to have become particularly clouded. Disobedient media previously reported on human trafficking scandals stemming from the conflict in Kosovo, particularly those perpetrated by UN peacekeepers and paramilitary groups hired by UN, such as DynCorp. The BBC related that Amnesty International had also published a report which described UN peacekeepers fueling demand for sex trafficking, as well as sometimes participating in sex trafficking networks in the Kosovo area. The groups like Amnesty International, UN internal documents, Dick Marty via the Council of Europe would all raise such serious concerns, is alarming. It paints a very clear picture in light of the later Zoes Ark and Silby scandals of aid, work, and exploitation, too often going hand in hand with abuses taking place under the unfortunate protection provided by severe lack of accountability and sometimes diplomatic immunity associated with the UN. These extensively documented allegations illustrate a serious lack of government oversight, which has created an environment where perpetrators of human rights abuses and aid efforts have become almost impossible to distinguish during disaster relief and during serious conflict where conditions are often already chaotic and largely unregulated. The cases raise the important issue of the often blurred boundaries between abusers and aid workers. In the case of Zoe's Ark, the potential removal of 10,000 healthy children with relatives from areas not affected by the Darfur conflict begs the deeply disturbing question: if this is what was caught, what abuses are occurring that we do not catch?
Mm-hmm.
This is a really brilliant article by Elizabeth Voss, writer and associate editor at Disobedient Media. And it's cited with Guardian articles, NBC News, WikiLeaks. You can click on any of the many hyperlinks. There's like, what, 30 in this article right here. And you click on them, you get reputable sources. This is something that is highly cited, written the way a true journalist would write.
You know what's funny? There's another member of the media who's been exceptionally quiet about a lot of this bullshit, although he's been involved with various charities, and that's Henry fucking Rollins. And I imagine Henry Rollins is going to be the next one.
A groundbreaking article, and
whatever.
For people,
sooner or later,
I
Henry's
know
going to
that
get caught.
sometimes on YouTube or there's just so many insane, horrific, heinous things.
Because he plays this
that sometimes
hands-off
your mind
bit,
tunes out.
does Henry?
And
but he's connected because his parents are both civil servants or whatever.
depending on who's
both
telling you
bureaucrats for the
what's
feds
going on, your mind
both involved with
shuts down
various
even more.
programs.
But when you have an article,
Henry must be CIA.
like this Zoe's Ark and the blurred lines between humanitarian aid
If he
and
ain't, he's a
exploitation,
CO for him.
when you have an article like this, where
CI, I should say.
it's linked to a great number of reputable sources, this type of thing not only is taking place, but it's a very, very dark, insidious, evil correlation between these humanitarian aid workers and the most powerful politicians in France or the US, for example. Kind of saying, well, take it easy on them because they were in a war-torn country or a country that experienced an earthquake and they were trying to help out, but the fact that they're trying to steal children, that should overshadow everything. And yet you have Bill Clinton, you have Nicolas Sarkozy, and you have the United Nations really going to bat and defending the perpetrators of crimes or of the potential crimes.
She looks like a whale, doesn't she? She looks like a fucking killer whale sometimes. I think of Orca when I see her.
Give me your thoughts below. Disobedient Media, the article is below. It's linked to, it is a reputable source, but it's linked to a great many reputable sources. Share this segment everywhere. Share the
Thanks, HA. I'm thinking that's pretty much going to end the stream for this afternoon. I'd like to thank you for watching. My name's James PFP. This is Pitchforks and Flaming Torches. Next edition, you can see we get it all looking sharp and stuff. If you like what you see, you can subscribe below. I've been playing through content from other web creators here on YouTube for the last couple of days. But that's not all that I plan to do. I also do my own content. So I'm plotting and planning in the background. If you like what you see, please subscribe, comment below, and I will see you later.